We're going to talk about Field of Love, which is one of the beers that I think I'm probably drinking the most these days. This beer's it was built out of really my appreciation and love for mixed culture saison and farmhouse ale. Obviously, we make a ton of farmhouse ale here, and also now with the cellar kind of full throttle and up and running for us, I really wanted to take a stab at a blended, mixed culture forward saison. And so this beer, like I said, kind of is a culmination of all my favorite things, very mixed culture forward. The main characteristic for me being simply drinkability, but trying to be as complex as possible at the same time. The majority of this beer is foeder fermented. So it was fermented in a big oak fermenter. We have a couple of them now on site here. And here in the cellar, we have a 90 hectoliter foeder. So this was fermented primarily in that foeder. The actual recipe itself is mostly Pilsner malt, imported Pilsner malt from Europe, and some torrefied wheat, which gives us a lot of head retention. As you can see, it kind of clings to the glass a bit. And so we ferment this beer with our mixed culture, 100% blend of wild yeast bacteria, dozens of different cultures from all over the world, different bottles, different labs, different blends that we spent several years building. And ultimately, after fermentation finishes, over time, we'll then take that beer post-fermentation in the foeder, which usually lasts about 6 to 8 weeks. We'll go to barrels, let that sit for upwards of a year or more. And the cultures of bacteria in solution will begin to create acidity. So we took basically that same mixed culture from the foeder, and I actually made a saison, or kind of similar, same somewhat based recipe in a stainless tote tank, so in a different fermenter that wasn't that oak one, with the intention of creating a more yeast forward saison, using however that same mixed culture. So we actually added a ton of hops to this beer. Hops are antimicrobial. They kind of stunted the growth or really the expression of the acidity from the bacteria early on. So we had really a yeast forward version of this beer using the same culture. And then literally down to an actual blend, taking parts of this beer that are mixed culture, that are sat in barrels for a long time, have the acidity, parts of this beer that are mixed culture that don't have that acidity, and balanced a level of acidity that we actually wanted to promote sort of drinkability. So one of the hops that we use in it as well are actually aged whole leaf hops. These are 2015 crop year Sterling. So when we used them, they were 4 years old. The beer itself and the aroma, I get a lot of actual hop character that actually comes off, somewhat a nod to sort of lambic-esque kind of beers that have, a very aged hop sort of barney, attic sort of characteristic that you get from aging those hops for years and years and years, whole leaf. And then some delicate acidity with some really nice cracked grain. The yeast profiles there as well, sort of wild yeast, saison-esque kind of character. So the middle of the palate's really kind of grainy sweet, then it immediately goes right to, and yeasty, and then it kind of goes directly into somewhat like a delicate acidity that's then kind of cut by the aged hop. So you start to taste, somewhat of the vegetal characteristics of the hop, somewhat of those aged, attic cellar-esque kind of characteristics that you get from those aged hops and from a lot of our favorite mixed culture blended beers. I'd say there's even a touch of barrel in here too. And the barrels we use in this beer are going to be wine barrels. So we call this beer a foeder fermented mixed culture saison. Obviously, there's a little bit more that goes into it than just that, but we wanted this beer to be extremely approachable. We want this beer to be extremely drinkable. And at just 5% alcohol by volume, I can drink quite a few of these. So cheers, man. I hope you guys like it.